So you're obligated now, you put in a four-corner garment, so you're obligated now in putting tzitzis on. So that's the worst one could do. That would be the highest level. Mavatul mitzvahs aseh. The second level is what the Gemara talks about in Menachos, where a ma'isa with the malach and katina. Anytime you have an angel involved, so it's interesting ma'isa in its own right. But an angel came down, the katina, what's going to be with you with the mitzvah of tzitzis? It's a discussion exactly what he did, but he basically did some type of chap. He did something actively to exempt himself from wearing tzitzis. So whether he made a four-quarter garment, he made it into a three-quarter garment, but katina did something to actively prevent himself from fulfilling the mitzvah of tzitzis. He circumvented the mitzvah. So the Gemara says over there, Be'idan riska manchinilo, during time when God gets angry, so then you'll get punished. It's true. We see from that Gemara, Me'ikar ad-din, you're not obligated to wear a four-corner garment. So the Gemara agrees, you're right. He says, I'm not wearing a four-corner garment now, so I don't have to wear tzitzis. So we see that from the Gemara, it's clear. However, he did something that he basically turned a four-corner garment into a three-corner garment, and for that, actively doing that shtick, that the Gemara says, Be'idin riska, whatever that means exactly, but in time of anger, you will get punished for not, for taking a four-corner garment and making it into a three. So some point out the third level today maybe we're not even manchina, we're not even punished, because over there during time of the Mishnah, the Gemara, that was the normal begadim. The begadim you had were four-corner garment, and then in order not to be chayiv and tzitzit, you actively went ahead and did something to prevent yourself from fulfilling the mitzvah. But bizman hazeh, our garments are in four corners. We got to go out and buy a pair of tzitzis to find a four-corner garment. So therefore, that wouldn't even be the level of, it's not even as bad as katina. Katina actively did something, that be'idan riska you get punished, but merely not putting on a four-corner garment would not warrant a punishment either, even be'idan riska. So why?
Be'idan riska means he's going to get punished for doing this, or be'idan riska, he'll get punished for something else.
Right, he's not going to get punished for this, but this is this would be a schus, or like a life insurance policy. In other words, he's going to do something that later on, which he would deserve a punishment, so now God's going to get him, but he's not going to be punished for this, because you can't, that by itself didn't warrant the punishment.
Is there a way to learn this Gemara that Katina didn't actually do anything active?
Yes, that's how, you could, right, so...
In other words, that he just was not wearing a four-cornered baguette, and the Malach asks him, Katina might, what would it be? And the answer was, I'm not wearing, I don't know, but he didn't do anything. And then even though, you still have the risk.
Right, you could say that, but many say that from the Gemara, it's mashma that he actively did something. That's what, according to those Rishonim, right, if it's not that there are only two levels, he's no different than us, if you want to learn. Right, many Rishonim, they learned it's a third level in the Achronim, that from the Gemara, it's unclear, like he had his son in Beged, and he did something. It seems like he actively, that's the way many Rishonim learn, but I guess you could interpret the Gemara. If you did it that way, then it'd be no different than today. But some want to, one can debate that third level or not, but that's what many say. And today, if that's the case, it would be even less than that, because I'm not doing anything, I'm just not wearing a four-corner garment. So why should I put on a four-corner garment? Then that's what the Shita Mekubetes and others point out. That's the concept of, we learn out from the Gemara in Sotah by Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara says Moshe Rabbeinu was mitzvah that when he couldn't go to Eretz Yisrael, that he couldn't fulfill the mitzvahs HaTuyas Baretz, which is a separate discussion. Someone has said, we see from here, there's no mitzvah of Yishav Eretz Yisrael. Moshe wasn't upset he couldn't get them. That wasn't the mitzvah he was worried about. So that's a separate share. But we see what he was worried for is the mitzvahs hatuyas baretz. So the question is, well, if you're in Israel and you're not fulfilling what you should be doing, we understand to be mitzvah. But here he's in Chutz La'aretz. Why mitzvah is something out of your control? So we see from here the concept that one should try as much as one can to try to put yourself in a situation where you can do as many mitzvahs as possible. In other words, it's not like katina, according to the way many learn, that he actively did something to circumvent, but I'm not circumventing, but I should actively go ahead and try to put myself in that situation. And that's why they say also by Moshe Rabbeinu, it says Chacham Leiv Yikach Mitzvahs by the Atzmos Yosef, when all the Jews were collecting the booty from the Bezos of Mitzrayim, and it says Moshe Rabbeinu was involved, wherever, if Yosef was, the bones were in the Nile River, wherever they were, and he was busy getting them. So we know there's a phrase, Oev Kesef Lo Yispa Kesef, that one who loves Kesef, Shlomo HaMelech, you have $100, you want 200. You have 200, you want 800. You want 800, etc. You're never satisfied. You always want more. So they borrow the phrase and say Moshe Rabbeinu was an Ohev mitzvahs or Yitzpah mitzvahs. He always wanted to do more. So, well, everyone else, even though you ask maybe that was a mitzvah, Bezos Mitzrayim, but he was involved in the mitzvah of Atzmos Yosef. In fact, they say over the Note of Yehuda, in one of his comments, he talks about the Arizal, I believe, or the Zohar, probably the Arizal. He says that Arizal loved mitzvahs so much, he added the 614th mitzvah. Some say others he added the 614th not to forget the Holocaust, it's something else. But the Arizal, they say, what mitzvah did he add? That the mitzvah of Shiva Nekiyam, for a woman counts, or someone counts, you should do it bepeh. This is day one, this is day two. We don't pass it like the Arizal, but the Note of Yehuda is just writing in the context that when you want to, you love so many mitzvahs that you want to do, you want to do more. So that seems to be a different level. There's one level where you're actually mevatel a mitzvah. So you're wearing a four-corner garment, then you're not doing your mevatel, you're not putting the tzitzis on. Then the second level is, next best thing, if you're wearing a four-corner garment and you don't want to put tzitzis on, then do what Katina did and round off the garment and then hope there is no Eden Ritzka. And then, or the third level is like today, so we're not even Eden Ritzka, we're not going to get punished, but it's in a situation we want to put ourselves that we can fulfill as many mitzvahs as possible. As we pointed out last week as well, not only in the positive but in the negative as well, that not only do we want to put ourselves to fulfill mitzvahs, but we try to put ourselves in a situation where we avoid, quote unquote, I wouldn't call them averas, but things that ordinarily wouldn't be able to do, but the only reason we're doing it, like the famous case I mentioned last week, the Ramban and Baal Amor, that we don't have this manazeh because we have modern technology, but the halacha of washing the katan before and after the milah, it's a sakana. So everyone agrees if you did the milah and you don't have any water and the child's in danger, so of course you heat up the water, you get someone else, you get the water for the child. But the shaila is, what happens if you're about to do the milah Shabbos and they knock over the water before you do the milah? So that's the machlokes Ramban Baal Amor. The Ramban says Eilucha mitzvah elu l'shaitza. That's it. You don't have to make cheshbonos. Yom shmina b'yom hashmini b'yom afil b'Shabbos. Go ahead. You have a mitzvah. Do a bris milah. I don't have to worry about. Okay, so a couple of minutes later I'll have to heat up water. So what? And the Baal Amor says no. It's true. We don't necessarily make cheshbonos depending how long they are down the line. But here isn't any suffix. You know for sure you're going to go ahead and it's happening right away. So he says one should not do the bris milah on Shabbos and wait until Sunday, because you don't have to put yourself in a situation where you have to be mavashel, do bishul on Shabbos. So the Shulchan will be passing like the Baal Amor. But we have that concept in other ways that one, or let's say the Note of Yehuda, I think the Minchas Chinuch discuss it by Pesach Sheni or by Pesach Rishon. Could you dafka make yourself a derech rechoka, so you don't, should you put yourself in a situation? So there's a lot of discussion on that, but that's the third level that many learn is here. So again, the first level is a mavatel mitzvah aseh. You're wearing a four-corner garment. The second level is if you actively go ahead and turn a four-corner garment into a three. So B'ikar Din, you didn't do anything wrong, but Eden Riska, you're going to get punished. And the third level is, I don't have a four-corner garment. So it's a good and very nice midah. One should imitate, try to be like Moshe Rabbeinu and others, and to try to do a mitzvah like Tzit-Tzit and try to acquire a four-corner garment so you could do it. Then we pointed out there's this discussion, what exactly is the nature of the mitzvah? The Gemara talks about it in Menachos really regarding Hotzah on Shabbos. Someone has a beged, they're walking outside and it rips. So the whole discussion about what you should do. In fact, that's a famous Machlokas Achronim on this Talis Katan, or do we consider, if they say the Talis Katan is puzzle, it's too small, which we'll get to, do you have to pull up the beged or not on Shabbos? Is it considered derech malbush or not? So that Gemara is only talking about Shabbos. That's an our issue. Our issue, the Mordechai says, well, if it's inside the home, no carrying, but you're wearing a four-corner garment, but the tzitzis are puzzle. Do I chayev to take off the tzitzis? So if it's during the week, everyone agrees you have to take them off. Take them off and fix it and put on fix the strings and make it kosher. But on Shabbos you can't make the knots. So the question is, am I obligated? No one says you have to leave it on, but the question is, am I obligated to take it off? So that's what the Mordechai quotes from Machlokas in the Rishonim, Rabbeinu Shalom and the Ri, whether one is obligated to take off on Shabbos inside the home, nothing to do with Hotzah. Can I wear this four-corner garment with puzzle? So that's what's in the Kudas HaMachlokas. So the Mordechai explains, and others explain to Mordechai, what is the nature, is that true? So people like to say, if you're wearing a four-corner garment, then the question is there an isser to wear a four-corner garment without the appropriate tzitzis on? The many learn that's not so simple. I'm not saying they're wrong, but that's the issue in the Rishonim. If you hold it's an isser aseh, even though tzitzis is formulated in the positive, but many in the Minchas Chinuch, like he writes by Suk and other mitzvahs, he writes it's an isser aseh, and therefore they learned it's an isser to wear a four-corner garment without tzitzis. If that is true, so then Shabbos inside your house, you got to take off the four-corner garment. However, others say no, there is no isser. Throw isser out of here. The tzitzis has nothing to do with isser. It's a mitzvah aseh. There's a mitzvah aseh to put on tzitzis. Again, as we'll see from Tosfos and Yevamos, that he seems to learn, in contrast to Shatnez, that's one of the discussions about aseh dochalos aseh, but the mitzvah of tzitzis only begins once you're wearing the four-corner garment. So there's a mitzvah aseh, once you're wearing a four-corner garment, not the mice of putting it on, like we'll see maybe by Shabbos, the issue might be the act of putting it on, but Tosfos writes by tzitzis, it's once you have the four-corner garment, then you become. So he says, so what does the Mordechai write? He says on Shabbos that you have there's a mitzvah aseh to put tzitzis on. So if it's during the week, you're right, take it off and put on tzitzis or put them on. But on Shabbos, since you can't do the mitzvah aseh, you're an honest, you're patur, and therefore you don't have no obligation to take off your tzitzis, your beged of tzitzis during this time. Once Shabbos is over, then you'll have to go ahead and fix it. But that's in the Kudas HaMachlokas, the Mordechai writes, he seems to say there is no isser. Not like it's classically assumed by many that there's an isser to wear a four-corner garment without tzitzis on. The Mordechai doesn't seem to learn it. He seems to learn the other way. It's only a mitzvah aseh, and therefore one would not be obligated to take off his tzitzis. Again, there's no reason to keep them on unless the air conditioning's on or it's cold and you want another beged. But then no one's saying you have to keep it on, but it's more what is the nature, the fundamental mitzvah of the mitzvah of sin. That's what they say, because they have a whole discussion at Gemara over there about, in Yevamos, about, as we'll get to, like Sadim B'tzitzis, as we'll see when we get into the materials in a minute. So it gets into the concept of Yesh Koach B'Yach HaChamim La'akor Dvar Torah B'Shev Al-Tasa. So we'll get into why is it Shev Al-Tasa? Why is it putting on the beged? So some say that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah isn't putting on the beged. It's once you have the beged on, then they discuss, and it could be a Shev Al-Tasa. But we'll get to that. So that's the Machlokas Rishon the Mordechai brings down. It's an interesting discussion once we're on Shabbos for a minute, that we know the briskers, or I guess if you're a real brisker, have a minute not to wear tzitzis on Shabbos. Because, again, it's a separate discussion in terms of a talis katan. In general, whether the shear that most people wear is kosher to begin with. There's a discussion, could you go out on Shabbos with them, because maybe it's not a kosher shear, and the Tzit-Tzit, so that's a discussion. However, there's also a famous Baal Amor, which we'll get to later on, but there's a famous Baal Amor sheet, which seems to be the Minhag Yisrael. Rov Klal Yisrael, a Chasidim, the Baal Amor, at least regarding Hilchos Tzitzis, the Baal Amor says that we know there's a mitzvah of Tcheles and a mitzvah of Lavan. So there's a discussion in the Mishnah, the Gemara. So the Baal Amor paskins, Tcheles and Lavan are ma'akiv. If you don't have Tcheles, there is no mitzvah of Tzitzis. So the Baal Amor Shita was, there is no mitzvah of Tzitzis. Ben B'talis Gadol, when the Rav was saying it over, the Rav was saying in amazement, you mean the Baal Amor wasn't buried in a talis? Like that's what he focused on, but there's a Ramban. The Ramban never saw the Baal Amor.
Even the Rabbanan?
Yeah, so according to the Baal, nothing. Ben the Rabbanan, there's no mitzvah. And the Ramban says, I hear, I don't know, it's known, maybe they live in another town, it's known, or I heard, that the Baal Amor never wore tzitzis in his life. And why? It's based on the Shita, that since we don't have Techeles today, so Techeles, so there's no mitzvah. If you don't have if you don't have Techeles, so you could buy even with, then, maybe you can wear a four-corner garment and not put it on, because there's no mitzvah. The mitzvah of tzitzis doesn't begin. That's a famous Shita, the Baal Amor, which Klal Yisrael has accepted not to wear tzitzis today. Just kidding. But that's a road Klal Yisrael do. But that's what, so therefore so that's what the Briskers, one of the reasons, so all year round, so all week long, we really don't pass them like the Baal Amor. But when it comes to Shabbos, again, maybe it's only for a talis katan, because the talis gadol they'll wear in shul. So therefore, they're not machmir like the Baal Amor all week long, because what's the harm? Because even according to there's no risk. If there's no mitzvah, then I'm not being mavatal any mitzvahs asa either. On Shabbos, we're dealing with an Isser Hotzah, Daraisa, or depending where you are. We know the Briskers, one of the, if you're a Brisker, Hotzah and Chada. Chada, those are the, main chumras. In fact, there's a friend told me over just an interesting Maisa. I'll get to your question. I think in Moresh HaKola, they were playing like volleyball, and one of the Soloveitchiks, one of the grandkids, were playing volleyball, and the ref called like a carry. If you know anything about it, if you don't, if you carry so he called the carry on this one of the Soloveitchiks. He got very upset and he was screaming, I'm a Brisker, we don't carry. It's known that even, Hotzah. But yeah, what's your question?
No, it's just interesting, because I thought that even if you hold that Chelis is ma'akiv, there's no, therefore, you can't put, you have to have Chelis, you can't put tzitzis. But you still can't wear, get into the other machlokas, you still wear a four-corner, if you're wearing a four-corner beged, you have a chiyuv to put on tzitzis. You just can't put on the tzitzis, therefore don't wear the four-corner.
No, right, that would tie into what we said, if there's an, right, if it's an Isser, like machlokas Rishonim, right. If there's an Isser, so then you're right, then perhaps.
And then the Briskers,
right.
Then it would seem to imply the Briskers hold that there's no incident.
Then it's from all week long, you mean?
Yeah, but then they would have to know there's no incident.
Well, with Shabbos they don't wear it; they take it off on Shabbos. But
on Shabbos would be because if you don't hold to this the whole week, then really you have the Mordechai's position on Shabbos taking over. So really, you could wear it on Shabbos. I mean, it would seem.
Oh right, in terms of that, right? Because on Shabbos, right? But that's right. So therefore, that's the way somewhere. The Briskers don't wear a talis katan outside because of Otzah. So either because of machmer for the Baal Amor, or perhaps some other lumdas we can come up right. But it's written right.
But it's very interesting. It's still that it's okay how you understand the Isser.
No, right. It gets into what's the fun, whether it's an Isser Aseh. Right. So Lamaisa they don't. But that's the famous Baal Amor Shita that the Chelis is ma'akev is halava, and therefore there is no mitzvah. The Ramban says the Baal Amor never was tzitzis, and the Rav seemed to focus on the burial aspect. He couldn't believe that even though you're minhag to be buried in a talis, but the Rav couldn't believe the Baal Amor wasn't buried in tzitzis.
They cut away the tzitzis?
Yeah, that's a separate discussion. What happens?
Yeah, so they're cutting out the talis. I mean, there's no.
Yeah, so right. No, I'm just saying it was more. Right. Either way, that's the way Rav Shach always said over in the Rav, but that's just a side point. So either way, so that's the So our minhag, we're not kosher, we don't pass like the Baal more, and that's it. So we wear a talis katan even on Shabbos. We're not concerned. We're not even kosher for shitas habal more. It's not accepted. It's not accepted lahalacha. So that's the issue of tzit-tzit, conditional mitzvah, and whether it's defined in terms of mitzvah or a mitzvah. So what type of material does one need to be chayiv in tzit-tzit? We know a concept of bigdehem, it has to be a beged. So what's the definition of a beged? So we have other places by Nikei Batim. So the Gemara over there discusses it in Menachos. It's a machlokas in the Gemara on what type of material is to be chayiv min haTorah, to be obligated min haTorah in tzitzis. What type of material does it have to be made from? So one opinion of the Gemara is it has to be wool or linen, semer or pishtim. That's one opinion. They learn it out. That has to be the garment to be chayiv min haTorah has to be either a linen garment or a woolen garment. And the other opinion is no, all begadim, whether it's cotton, whether it's silk, they're all chayiv min haTorah in tzitzis. So that's a machlokas in the Gemara, a machlokas in the Rishonim, which comes down a machlokas machaber Ramah, which comes out to be a machlokas the minhag Ashkenaz versus the minhag Sfard. That the machaber passes like those Rishonim, that to fulfill your mitzvah, again, you don't have to wear a four-corner garment, but if you're going to fulfill your mitzvah min haTorah of tzitzis, one has to wear, even the Sfardim agree, if you wear cotton, you're getting a mitzvah, you're only getting a mitzvah min drabanan, you're still getting a mitzvah, but to fulfill, I'll just use wool, since, as we'll get to why we don't wear linen today, but strictly speaking, it's wool and linen, but I'll just use wool now, because the minhag is not to use linen tzitzis today. So, according to the Sfardim, you'd have to wear a wool talis all the time. So, the minhag by a talis gadol is that everyone basically has wool. By talis katan, we know it's yesh v'yesh. Some have wools, some have the racing stripes as they call them, but you don't need the racing stripes. It's the wool that's important. And then you have the kad begadim. So, the Ramah says, afilu shar begadim. One can fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzis even with other garments besides wool and linen, i.e. silk, cotton, etc. If one has a cotton garment, a silk garment, one can fulfill the mitzvah min haTorah of tzitzis as well. So it's a machlokas machaber Ramah. And we'll see Rav Moshe in every tshuva he has by tzitzis, he always likes throwing in, and even though they'll be passing like the Ramah, but what's the big deal? It's a shaila on a din daraisa, so bali nefesh or b'nei Torah, whatever his exact language is. He always ends off his tshuva saying it's a nice. You're not obligated to put on any tzitzis, but it's a nice thing. Once you're doing tzitzis, you might as well put on the woolen ones. And there are pictures of Rav Moshe in the Catskills all the time, wearing his talis katan over his shirt, his nice big wool talis katan. That's the Rav Moshe, and the Mishnah Berurah feels the same way. It's a suffix on a mitzvah in Torah. You might as well go for it. And others say, what do you mean? We rely on the Ramah for Issa Skila, Issa Kares. What's wrong with the Ramah on an optional mitzvah? So, wait a minute, it's a machloket. We passing like the Ramah. We passing, it's not a suffix. And therefore there's nothing at all wrong with wearing cotton. In fact, there's a minhag hagra, that the Gra, they say, wore a cotton talis katan. And it's a question why, we'll get to it in a minute. But also in B'nai Brak the minhag is the stipler, the chazon ish. So usually they like going for the chumras, but maybe we'll see it is a chumrah, but a chumrah in what? But the interesting, many people B'nai Brak follow the stipler, the chazon ish, the gra, and they wear a talis, cotton talis katan. So somebody asked the chazon ish, Machokas Rishonim Machaber Ramah, how come you don't? And the Mishnah Berurah, says. So he says. So the Mishnah always followed the chazon ish. So he said, "You know why I wear a cotton? Because I want to teach people. People might think that if I'm wearing a wool talis gadol, they'll think if you wear cotton, you don't have to put tzitzis on it. You're not chayav." It was more of an what they say over is more of an educational thing to say, yeah, we pass in a cotton bag, it also needs tzitzis. That's what they say in the name of the Chazan. That's in the Sefer, the Tzitzit Sefer, they quote it. But getting back to the Vilna Gaon, so why did the Vilna Gaon wear a cotton tzitzis? Again, so some people think it's a stira, in the Ma'aser Rav, it says he wore a cotton beged, but then in his Bir Hagra, he just, when they talk about in Shulchan Aruch about wool, so he just refers you to the Gemara, Menachas. The Bir Hagra doesn't pass, he's just giving you Mar Makomas, it's not a stira at all. People think it's Masha from that Bir Hagra, he says to wear wool, which it's not, but that's how many quote. He's just quoting the source of what of those sheetas who say to wear wool, that's where they get it from. So the Vilna Gaon, the Ma'aser Rav is quoted that to wear cotton. So the question is why? So I think it was Shmuel Salant and others give different reasons. One is the Gra was machmir. He wore cotton. What do you mean he was machmir? He was machmir in Hilchas Shatnez, not in Hilchas Tzitzis. He was machmir. What do you mean Hilchas Shatnez? What does Shatnez have to do with him wearing a cotton garment? So we know the halacha by Shatnez is wool and linen woven together. So however, that's the halacha. But there's a chumrah in Hilchas Shatnez that you shouldn't have wool and linen on top of one another. And therefore they say, apparently, during the days of the Vilna Gaon, it was common practice to wear linen shirts. So therefore, whether he wore his talis katan under his shirt or over his shirt, so he didn't want to put a wool talis katan under his shirt or above his shirt, and therefore they say it was a chumrah in Hilchas Shatnez. What about his talis gadol? Maybe one could say a chiddush, maybe he wore a jacket during davening. Actually, the Gra wore a talis gadol all day. So again, he must have had something, maybe he wore some other thing above his shirt that he wasn't bothered by, assuming this is true. This is the true reason. But that's what they bring down. It was a chumrah, so that's true. So then they shouldn't, obviously B'nai Brak, they don't buy that reason, because if that's true, most shirts are in linen today, and therefore if that was the reason, then there's no reason to wear a cotton bag if you want to follow Shita Sagra. Others give another reason, and that as I pointed out, the Vilna Gaon used to wear a talis gadol all day, which, strictly speaking, that's what really one should do. The reason we don't is because it's pretty hard to go to work wearing a talis gadol, moving around. So we just wear it during davening, but there's a mitzvah all day to wear it. So the Gra wore a talis gadol all day. So they say like this: so he wore the talis gadol, was from wool. He fulfilled his mitzvah in Torah of wearing a talis gadol, and he also wanted to fulfill the mitzvah d'Rabbanan. There's a pasuk in Avol Sasser. There's a mitzvah to listening to the Chachamim. So he wanted to fulfill, which is a chiddush in its own right, and he wanted to fulfill his mitzvah midrabanan of tzitzit as well. So he fulfilled his mitzvah in Torah with the talis gadol, which he wore all day. And therefore for Khan, he wanted to get a kiyum of lo sasser, the mitzvah midrabanan of listening to Chachamim, and therefore he wore the Khan, which is interesting, which gets into the issue of, we touched on Rav Scheinberg,
Still in B'nai Brak, and they shouldn't be wearing cotton.
Correct. If this is the reason, then today most people do not wear a talis. Right. I'm saying the bottom line is, the Ma'aser, they don't give the reason, but these are reasons given. So I'm pointing out, I'm in agreement with you. If these reasons are true, so then but then according to the Gra, then if you're not wearing a talis gadol, so you're not getting a mitzvah in Torah. Well, we assume like the Rama anyway. That's right. But according to that, both reasons wouldn't fit. That's what the Chazon said. It was more of an educational reason, that he wanted to teach people that cotton is also chayev, whether it's chayev in our Torah, but to teach the chayev. So it's interesting to note that Rav Scheinberg wears many different layers of tzitzis. Different opinions how many. You hear the whole gamut from 12, 18, some say no, much more, 30s, 40s. So I've heard different things. Why did he wear so many tzitzis? So someone told me he heard that when I think his daughter or someone was very sick, and therefore he decided, I'm not sure exactly why tzitzis per se. There are a lot of things you could do, like tzedakah, other things, but he took on wearing many different begadim of tzitzis. Others, I heard another Maisa brought down that they said, why are you wearing all these? He says, because it's a mitzvah, which is a fundamental question. Is that true? I mean, of course it's a mitzvah. Tzitzis are a mitzvah, but the question is that if I put on 6 4-quarter garments, am I getting 6 mitzvahs? Then maybe everyone should be wearing them. Is one, it's like, so with the gra is at least, with Vashra and the gra, that it's one mitzvah. The only reason he put on a kain is that because he wanted to get a mitzvah in a Torah, and maybe the mitzvah d'Rabbanan might be different. But Mashra, he felt he's gaining more, assuming this explanation and why he's wearing it. That's, and so Pashas, we don't know. The problem is we assume the normal way of wearing is supposed to be a beged, and therefore the minhag is people wear one shirt. So that's all you do. If you have 3 begadim on that are 4 corners, so everyone agrees you should be chayav to put tzitzis on them. But that's not, it's like you mentioned, the mechzik yehura. Rav Scheinberg, the average person, they say, I want to do more mitzvahs. See, on one hand, we want to strive like Moshe Rabbeinu to do more, but there's always a balance between, you have to know where you're holding, what the normal is. So, so I don't see anyone recommending anyone else to put on many begadim. That would be a mixed kihur, like we mentioned last week, the Ramah in Hilchos Tzitzis, why, even though normally on a mitzvah sasesha as man grama, women volunteer, it's praiseworthy for a woman to volunteer a mitzvah saseh, and the minhag of Ashkenaz even to make a bracha, but the Ramah himself writes, but by tzitzis, that's one of the mitzvahs a woman should not volunteer. Why not? So the Ramah writes, because when do we say a woman should volunteer, it's praiseworthy, it's a good thing that she should volunteer a mitzvah saseh, or what should she volunteer? When there's a chiyuv on a man to do it, or on someone, that mitzvah is around, the chiyuv exists for someone, then it's okay to volunteer. But since the nature of the mitzvah sits, it's not a mitzvah chiyuv to begin with. We don't have a chiyuv to wear a 4-corner garment. Once we do, we have a chiyuv to put tzitzis on. This is only a mitzvah kiyumis, so therefore you thought it was mixed yehura for a woman to volunteer put on. So we see the minhag is not like Rav Scheinberg, but clearly, he's different speculations. Anyone hear any other reasons why he puts on many pair of tzitzis? But either way, so that's the halacha. So it's a machlokas rishonim. The machaber paskins, you have to have wool. So if you're a Svardi and you want to, again, you can wear kain, but you're only getting a mitzvah midrabanan. According to if you're Svardi, one should, to fulfill the mitzvah in our Torah, they should be wearing a wool talis katan all the time. And if you're Ashkenaz, so then you could, again, so the Mishnah Berurah and Ramosha, like even if you're Ashkenaz, they say you should be machmir to put on a wool to fulfill all shitas. But strictly speaking, Meker Adin, the Ramah and the minhag, the Ma'aseh the Gra, there's nothing wrong at all. As people say, you rely on the Ramah for kares and skila, for to do a mitzvah, conditional mitzvah, you can also rely on the Ramah, and therefore you don't have to worry. One can get the mitzvah in Torah with the kan beged as well. So that's the machlokas rishonim, etc. So the Gemara says there's one material that's exempt from tzitzis. Exempt ben daraisa, ben darabanan, as Leza pointed out, leather. Beged shel or is exempt, is putter from tzitzis. However, the Gemara does not tell us why. This tells us the facts of life, that a leather garment is not obligated in tzitzis. So comes along, there's a famous machlokas, Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, among others, on today we have, what about synthetic materials like rayon, like polyester, nylon, we'll see fishnet maybe. All those materials, are they chayiv, can you wear, are they chayiv in tzitzis? If you're having a 4-corner garment, are you chayiv in tzitzis? So Rav Moshe says, Do you know why the Gemara says or is exempt? Because or is a sheet. In order to be considered a beged, it has to be woven. Shasi and Erev, the wolf and the war, something like that. Yeah. So you need to have, it has to be woven. So leather comes in sheet. So therefore it's exempt. So therefore the shaila is, what about material today? Synthetic material that starts off as a sheet, but you cut it up into threads and you make it, and you wove it into a garment. So you take nylon, rayon, etc. Does that become chayav in tzittis? So Rav Moshe has a chiddush. He writes yes. Rav Moshe says, when do we say it's pater? If it's doma to leather, it stays as a sheet. But if you turn it into a woven material, so then, according to Rav Moshe, if you're wearing rayon, poly, all the synthetic materials, if one can't fulfill the mitzvah of tzittis, they put on a four-cornered garment, and he says the chayav. Many poskim disagree.
But does rayon and all these materials have an shtia?
That's the assumption he's making, that it has to be enough. Whatever the definition of a beged is, they have to have.
What's the material? So I'm not sure I know the material, but polyester doesn't sound like it comes with a.
No, it does not. Right, I'm not a tailor either.
But polyester thread.
No, but what I'm saying is they cut it into threads, and like they twirl it. They wove it together. I'm not sure exactly the materials either. I just know they talk about it. It can't be woven. So this is, the general idea is I know it can be woven. That's, for my purposes, that's enough. So they point out that Rav Moshe has a chiddush. Tzvi Pesach Frank and many others saying, what are you talking about? Since it's a beged that is exempt from tzittis, the fact that you you weave it and make it into you make it woven, that doesn't count. You still put them in that tzittis. So many poskim disagree with Rav Moshe's chiddush. So according to Rav Moshe, you could wear a nylon, rayon, or any of those synthetic materials that are woven now. He says they become chayav in tzittis, and one can fulfill the mitzvah with it. Whether it's a mitzvah in our Torah now, if you assume shar begadim according to the Rambam, and this fits, so that maybe even your mitzvah in our Torah. And other poskim say no, these aren't begadim, and therefore, according to them, you wouldn't be chayav, and you cannot fulfill your mitzvah with the Beit Yad Rav Moshe to rely on. And then there's a further shiloh. They talk about the fishnet, the mesh. So someone might say, even if you assume, like Rav Moshe, that the synthetic materials can be woven in the chayav in tzittis, there's another group within that group who say when it comes to fishnet, I'm backing down, because based on a Mishnah and Kalim, that what's the definition of a beged? A beged, something with holes in it, that's something you could see through, like if you're wearing, you could see the basar, so it's not a beged. So they argue, even if you assume that you can rely on polyester, nylon, but then there's another host of poskim who are against nets. Again, so, I'm not going to say someone who's wearing fishnet does not get the mitzvah, but poskim say, that the more you go in, you're running a more individual, more the minority view in terms of your mitzvah of tzitzis. But clearly, wool is, according to everyone, is ideal, and according to the Sfardim, you have to wear wool to fulfill your mitzvah in Torah. But for us B'nai Ashkenaz, one can fulfill the mitzvah in Torah with cotton and silk and shar begadim as well.
What's the lumdus that or should be a beged for tuma, but not a beged for our purposes?
Yeah, so the way, that's right, that's part of the way Rav Moshe, he's saying because if it's a sheet. So I guess, right, we see from here.
But by tuma, everybody agrees that it is mekabel tuma.
Right, no, so
there's no machlokas there.
Right, so we see from here that there are clearly different gedarim when it comes to a beged. It's like, for kalim and like in different.
Yeah, just like wondering why. Why is it by tuma an or beged or is mekabel tuma? No machlokas. And here we have a new definition for the beged that now we come up with that has to have the shti and erev.
Right, that's a good question. But he's right. No, I know by tuma, it is tuma. maybe it's something to do with more of the beged or not, but it's a good question why. But right, the facts are true.
It's not just a different beged, it's a different kli.
No, but beged or is it own by its own right, right?
Yeah, but that there's an extensive idea of the kli. The tumah is a kli that's in the It's more than the kli. But over here, it's specifically doing beged. What I'm saying is the beged or you can extend it to the concept of kli.
I think that's the way.
I'm just throwing out this.
I know. I'm saying that's the way. I'm saying that's the impression I got from Rav Moshe, that in terms of whatever the definition is, but maybe whether you say it's more of a kli versus a beged, but that's the fact. And Rav Moshe seems to the way Rav Moshe seems to explain it.
Here you're making is the sense that by tumah, the concept of beged is an extension of the concept of kli.
Right.
But that just comes to my mind. Okay, but that doesn't apply by beged or tzitzis. I have no proof of it. I'm just
He's thinking aloud.
Yes.
No, right. So that's what they point out. That because the Gemara doesn't give us a reason for or; it just says it's not, and the poskim discuss it. So what about then? What about linen? We know it's samaru pishtim. Is it din? So linen garments are also chayiv min haTorah. So how come I don't see that I go to the Svarim stores to buy tzitzis and I ask for linen garments? No one has any. How come? So that's actually machlokas, a discussion in the Gemara Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. One of the 18 cases we follow Beis Shammai by sudden besitzis, that why don't we put on it? So really min haTorah, you're right. You chayiv to put on tzitzis on a four-corner garment of a four-corner linen garment is chayiv min haTorah, and you chayiv in tzitzis. So why is it that we don't have a linen garment today? So that was Xera, so Beis Shammai, the way we paskin, so that's a discussion exactly whether it's this out to Tcheles, that we know Tcheles, in addition to being blue, but it has to be from wool. Tcheles has to be wool. So therefore the concern was, there are a lot of phonies then, trying to make some more money, and there's something called Kala Ilan, something that looked like, it was very hard to get real tchelas, and you couldn't prove it, I guess, at that time, and people were saying it was tchelas when it wasn't. So what I'm saying, so the problem is then, if you're putting so it was clearly, it was wool, but the question was whether it was tchelas. So the problem is, if you put wool on a linen garment, shalom b'makkah mitzvah, we assume you need tchelas. When you do the mitzvah, according to the Baal, there's no mitzvah, but for us to do the mitzvah b'shleimuso, so in order for us to put wool threads on, usually you could put linen threads, but if you're going to put wool on a linen garment, you have to have the tcheles. So we're concerned that the tcheles isn't really, it's fake tcheles, and therefore you'll end up wearing shatnez shalom b'makkah mitzvah. And therefore, Beis Shammai was concerned that it's the way we assume, and therefore one cannot wear, one does not wear, we do not put tzitzis. It's a question, you might be able to wear a four-corner garment of linen. The Xer that says you can't put tzitzis on that garment because the concern is you're going to be wearing shadnis shalom b'makkah mitzvah. So the question is, it's a very interesting ma'isa. The rush with this interesting and sad and tragic ma'isa with the Maharam in Rutenberg, who the government put him in jail, and they wanted to have a ransom for money, and he told them, I don't want you doing it, because then if you give them money, then you're going to cause an outbreak of people, they're going to take all the Rabbanim and other people. So they listened to him for that. So for 14 years he was in jail. He also said, don't pay for my body. That they didn't listen to. They paid afterwards. But the Rush, who was the Talmud of the Maharam Rutenberg, who lived in Germany with him, he was nobody's fool. He knew he was next in line. After the Maharam Rutenberg, if he stuck around, they were going to take him. So he took off. He left Germany and he went to Spain, which is the Sephardi town. He actually knew that the Chuvas, the Rashba, got him a pulpit. Actually, I think the Rashba was the big pulpit. That was in Barcelona. He got the small town in Toledo. So it was interesting. Rush, the Minig Ashkenaz, an Ashkenaz rabbi leading the Sephardi community. In fact, that's what they say. The Chacham Tzvi was Tzvi Ashkenazi. He was an Ashkenazi, but he he dealt with Sfar, that's why he's called the Chacham Tzvi. Chacham, that's where he got the name Chacham Tzvi. So the Rush was that he was told he was an Ashkenaz and all these, so he saw many strange things going on in Toledo. And one of the things was, he saw people wearing linen tzitzis, they put linen strings, and if a wool, there were people walking around with the linen four-corner garments, and they had linen strings on them. They said, "What's going on here?" Didn't they? Don't. So they said, "Rabbi, don't you know?" So he figured. So what the Rosh said was, after he thought about it, he figured the following. What's the basis for it? So he thought to himself that it must be, the reason is, it must be for the following. He says, because we know, the question is, how can the Chachamim tell you not to put tzitzis on a four-cornered linen garment? It's a mitzvah min Torah. So the Gemara, we know there's a concept of akiras davar min Torah. We know you'd be okay davar min Torah b'shei v'al-tasa. Again, b'shei v'al-tasa, because as we mentioned, the chiyuv is only once you put on the tzitzis, they're already on you, then the chiyuv begins. So it's b'shei v'al-tasa. So the question is, how could they do it? How could they be oker? They're allowed to be oker davar, akiras davar min Torah b'shei v'al-tasa. So the Rosh doesn't spell it out, but the Mishkanas Yaakov, and the Sefer, I think the Kehelis Yaakov, he explains what's the pshat in the Rosh. The Rosh says that they felt that since during his day there was no more fake chelas around, so he thought, so Hadar Kashta, the original law, the Gzera falls off, and therefore the mitzvah goes back. That you put on linen strings on a linen garment. What about a davish of a minion? We know once the Gzera, low plug, you can't go change it without the Shin and time of the Kra. So what the Rush, or the way that Mishkanas Yaakov explains the Rush, is how did they know that this is different? This Gzera, there's certain Gzeras D'Rabbanan that are built into the Takana, and there are other Gzeras D'Rabbanan we don't know, like the Gemara tells us in Avodah Zarah. So let's say Gvinas Akum. Especially in the beginning in Eretz Yisrael, was the rabbis did not tell the Balabatim. They said, you can't have Gvinas Akum. They didn't tell them why. And then what happened was, well, let's say years later, when they wanted to know why did we answer it, so the Gemara has 6 different reasons trying to figure out what it was. So the Gemara, so they didn't tell the people. So there's certain that we don't know exactly. We don't.
First year.
Yeah. So they talk about the different Gzeras that are built. So the rule is, if a Gzera is built in, the problem is it's very hard to know this, but however they know, but the rule is, if a Gzera is built into the Takana, so then once the Gzera doesn't apply, the Takana automatically falls off. And if this said, don't do this, and we don't know why, so then it's a low plug. So how does the Rush know that the case of Tchelas was built in? He says, because we have to be, because it's an akiras davar min Torah. You have to have a very good reason. If there's a mitzvah min Torah to put strings on, how could the rabbis come along and tell you not to do it? There's a very good reason. The very good reason was they didn't want people to be walking around with Shadow Shalom Malka Mitzvah. And then that's the Minik Svardi in Spain, which he was still against. But the Minik in Svardi, why the people in Toledo used to walk around, well, that's where he figured out that's the reason. He saw many strange customs, he said, to him was strange, because he was an Ashkenaz, and he still felt that wasn't. But it was Yesh Ami Lismach. If you do it, but you have the Chuvas HaRush to rely on, but our Minig Ashkenaz is not to put tzitzis on a linen garment. We assume the Gzera D'Rabbanan is still intact. In fact, that's how the Torah became the Torah. The Torah had that he had the Rush's father, so the Rush was one of the few people who knew the Minig Ashkenaz and knew the Minig Sfard. He was able to write the Torah Shulchan Aruch. He could build on the background of the Rush and the Sfardim as well. So that's why, even though linen is a mitzvah in our Torah, and we should be putting the linen garments on, but that's what we assume, like Beis Shammai, that it's a Gzera al Tzechet. So again, to them, Bisman Hazeh, that was his state. And the question would be today, if we assume we have Tcheles, so that according to us, it's not a Shiloh we don't put on, but according to the Minik Sfard in Toledo, if in that day they had what we, according to Tcheles today, then that'd be a further question on whether you could still put on, you'd still be able to put on the linen threads on the linen tzitzis. We'll have to stop here.